Good evening, Comanche County. I'm Rarchar Tortorello. You know, the political landscape in America is shifting. For decades, the left took the working class, veterans, minority communities for granted, but people are waking up. Tonight, we're talking about the Great Migration. We're breaking it down exactly why lifelong Democrats are walking away and choosing to become Republicans. I have my co-host, Dr. Lisa Pleasant. Lisa?
Hello, how are you?
Hey, Charlotte's on special assignment. She'll be back next month. Um, we have a fantastic show lined up for you. We're joined by a man who, in the green room, for the last 15 minutes, I am amazed by his background, who exemplifies service and leadership. He served over 20 years in the U.S. Army with 3 combat deployments. He's a church elder, an executive, and your Lawton City Councilman for Ward 2, Taron Epps. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
So, Taron, before we get into the really heavy lifting of in talking politics and all there is to that, we want our listeners to know who you truly are. So, I know, just as Rashard just said, you served over 2 decades in the military. Can you tell us a little bit about your service and ultimately what made you decide to plant your roots here in Lawton?
Oh, that's a funny question. I tell this story to a lot of people because, as stated, I'm not from here, and I retired kind of unexpectedly and abruptly due to an injury. But my wife and I, we were driving around town here in Lawton locally, and we were trying to figure out, we were having a discussion around, okay, where we're going to move to, where we're going to settle roots, and we don't want to do a whole bunch of moving around from different places. We've lived that life already. Instead, she looks at me and she says, "Why don't we just stay here?" Which for me, at that time, I did not have a preference. I had moved around so much of my adult life and in my youth that it didn't matter to me, but I was curious. So I says to her, I said, "Victoria, why do you?" I said, "I don't have a problem settling here, but I'm just curious. Why would you say that?" And she says, "I just think that something's tugging at me. And I just think that, over the years, we've talked about what does retirement look like. And you've always expressed this desire to work within the community." And she goes, "Something just tells me you can be more effective at doing that here, right here in Lawton." And so I listened to her and thank God that I did, because it is playing out just that way. I've had an opportunity to work at the Lawton Chamber of Commerce, where I really got to get involved with the community. The chamber, even though it's business focused, it because of that and the ties to the business community here and that bridge to the municipal government here, you really get to see this desire from local people, local business owners, community workers, just to make Lawton what it is, such a great place to be. And so that was for me where the light bulb went off, and I was like, "Yep, this is it right here. This is home."
You didn't just retire and kick your feet up, so our stories are similar. I did retire in 2007, and I was also the Ward 5 city council member for the city of Norman. And I came in right at COVID and when our liberal council decided it was a good idea to defund the police. So, you served as the COO for the Chamber of Commerce. You're an executive at Comanche, and last year you stepped up to fill a vacancy on the Lawton City Council for Ward 2. Now, what made you decide to jump into the local political arena?
It was, I had transitioned to working for Camgian, as you mentioned, and it was some things that I still wanted to be a part of that was driving change and progression at the chamber. And so when that seat opened up, I couldn't pass it by. Here was my opportunity to continue to serve at the municipal level. And so I stepped right into it. And I got to tell you, I love every minute of it. There are some people that say, "Oh, why would you do that?" And, people are going to attack you. And there are people that are going to have their opinions. You can't make everyone happy, and that's fine. But to be able to contribute at such a capacity, I mean, and my peers on the council are just phenomenal. So
Hmm.
it's nothing but a great experience for me. I'm both learning and at the same time giving back to the community.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Let me ask you a question. So you're serving on the council now. When did you find? When did you learn it was nonpartisan? In other words, here, um, were you told that your job is to look after the constituents? The streets, roads, utilities, maintenance, make sure the trash runs on time, or did you come in with a frame of mind that you wanted to push maybe an ideological agenda?
No, I didn't want to push an ideological agenda. And I think the majority of the council operates that way because it is nonpartisan. But to answer the roots of your question, I knew that from my time at the Chamber of Commerce. You have to build these relationships with the municipal government, both the mayor, the city manager, the elected officials of the council,
Hmm.
and you learn a lot about how they operate. And because of my position at the chamber, I got to spend some time on some different committees, some different boards. So I knew how things ran and how things worked. And you can see a political lean from some of the council individuals, but for the most part, I like the dialogue that we have. I don't see anyone that's leading with a particular political agenda. If you ever have the opportunity to really see our council meetings, and all of them are broadcasted, yeah, I mean, we really get into some deep conversations, and there's a back and forth exchange of information, and a decision is made not based off of some sort of political whim or a catchy phrase. A decision is truly made. And I think while we don't always vote the same, I can honestly say I believe that we're all voting with the best interest of the city in mind.
Absolutely, absolutely. I had to learn the same thing too. So let's get straight into tonight's main topic. So you are
Sure.
Democrats, and the topic tonight is when Democrats choose to become Republicans. And so during the last general election, we saw a massive realignment. Working class Americans and minority voters left the Democrat Party in record numbers and came to vote for Trump. Taron, from your perspective as a leader and a veteran, what is the driving shift? What is driving this movement to leave the Democrat Party, become Republican? Why are so many people looking at today's Democratic Party and saying they just don't belong there anymore?
I think that people are. Let me back up. Yeah, studies will show you that most, not all, but most people align themselves with their parents' political views. I think that as in modern society, in the way that you have access to so much information, you start to go beyond just your family's political views. And as we look at how social media is exploding and how you just have this great access to information, and you start to figure out like who you are and what's important, there are things that you want to align yourself with. Now, I'll tell you that in a two-party system, which don't get me wrong, I like our form of government. I don't have an issue with it, but in a two-party system, you're really forced to okay, which box are you going to put me in, right? I've got to pick one of these boxes. And there are some things about this party that I don't like, and there's some things about this party that I don't like. And it becomes how do you weigh that so that you can jump in the box that you belong in, right? And um, for me, it was okay. Where do my religious beliefs line up? Where are my core values? And am I representing that well with the party I was in? Or do I need to look at making some adjustments? So it was more about that for me than anything else.
Awesome. So now it's interesting that you mentioned a box, right? Because I think as veterans, and we were talking that all three of us are veterans, the one box that we fit in is that we have a heart for the community. We have a heart for service. Even and we typically say you can take the person out of the military, but the military never out of the person. So we always want to serve. So now leading with that, Taron, you serve as the elder at your church and as a vice chairman of the Youth and Family Affairs Committee. A lot of folks say that they didn't leave the Democratic Party. The Democrat Party left them, and it happened when we abandoned traditional family values. How big of a role does your faith and the protection of the nuclear family play in the political shift?
Yeah, it's a huge piece. It teases out a little bit more of the statement I just made about core values and beliefs. The question really is, what are some of the more details of that? As an elder in the church, a lot of my views in how I see the world, or I mean, that's through my faith and my belief. That's through Christianity. That's not to say that I want to force my beliefs onto others, but it does shape the way that I view the world, and it does inform my decisions, right? And so for me, you can't separate Tehran from biblical truths. You just can't make that separation. Now, that's not to say, again, I don't mean that I'm here to impose my religious beliefs on others, but it does, I make no bones about it. It definitely shapes who I am as a person and what my values are. And so I kind of look at it from that perspective. Did that answer your question? I kind of
Yeah,
dove
absolutely.
into the.
Yeah, no, 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 absolutely, absolutely. And it brings the following question, which ushers the next question just perfectly, right? Because we're going to
Mhm.
have these new voters coming in, right? And when they come over to our side, like you said, there's so much information out there that you just have to pay attention and follow what your moral compass is and how do you align, right? So
Yeah.
this absolutely changes the makeup of the Republican Party as we
Mhm.
have a shift right from Democrats to Republicans.
Mhm.
Sometimes lifelong Republicans can be a little bit hesitant with a former Democrat. Okay, when we switch teams, and I say we because I, like you, I'm a former Democrat turned into a Republican for the same
Mhm.
values and reasons that you've said. How do we, as the Comanche County GOP, make sure that we are welcoming these new voters and building a strong, unified coalition?
Hmm, that's good. I think that's a challenging question, and I certainly think that Comanche County is doing a good job at leveraging different media outlets, which is what you really have to do in today's society. I tell people to get a message out. Gone are the days where you could just do a TV ad and you can just do a newspaper ad and your marketing is done. No, those days are gone. To get accurate information out and to get the message out about what's important to us in Comanche County, you have to leverage all of the media outlets, and I certainly think we're headed in that direction. I think last month I seen the news there. I seen KSWO there at our monthly luncheon. Certainly, this podcast is another outlet. The website, I've seen the website, and I mean the Facebook. You have to really leverage all avenues of information, and you have to be able to have honest dialogue, right? You
Mhm.
have to be able to come into an environment and feel safe that, hey, we can talk about different issues, and no, we may not agree on every issue, but can we have the dialogue and can we come to some. I think that's how you really show people that, hey, there's a spot for you here at the table. You can express yourself.
Absolutely,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
That's a good answer. I like that. Tehran, have you been following the state politics, state question 836 open primaries? You know what that is? Have you?
I've heard a little bit about it.
So the open primaries, it failed. They failed to get the signatures. They failed in the signature gathering verification
Yeah.
28% of the signatures turned in, they lost because they probably didn't ask that one question: are you registered to vote in the state of Oklahoma? So, but if it had passed the verification process, and this is a two-part question, and had gotten on the ballot, so a lot of folks are kind of weary of Democrats who become Republicans. Now, have you run into this where you're in the GOP, and you're talking and people want to know your pedigree, and do you ever bring up the fact that you were once a Democrat, and if you do, what do people and how do they react?
No, I don't really bring it up. If I'm asked, I tell the truth. I speak about who I am and what I believe in, and I let people decide from there. I'm a person that I like to look at people based off of their actions,
Mm,
not just always what they say. And I like for people to look at my actions and form their own opinion about where they think I sit. Look at how I talk on the city council. Look at how I vote on things, and make your own decision. I am not a fan of of being able to allow individuals to kind of cross party votes. In the primaries, that I have some issues with that. I have some
we,
heartburn with.
we all
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
Yes.
It doesn't give a true reflection, in my opinion. It doesn't allow for a true reflection of who those individuals in either party want to
Mm,
want up front and to represent them. You've allowed some tainting, if you will, and I try to use that word as kindly as I can, but you allow some tainting in the process, in my opinion.
absolutely. Let's go back to the second question. You also served on the Lawton Race Relations Commission. The political left consistently uses race and identity politics to divide Americans into victim groups. So how does a conservative message of merit, hard work, and equal opportunity actually do a better job of uniting our community?
I this is what I tell people when it comes to that. There are inequalities within ethnic communities, but it's not. I take it from a different perspective than I think most others do. I don't think that it's through programs that don't deliver an outcome that
Mhm.
you balance those scales. I don't believe that. I do believe that it is successful people that have achieved a certain amount of success in life to go back into the communities and show that, hey, through hard work, through given the right opportunities, and through determination, there are avenues for you to achieve and do well in life. I certainly consider myself an example of that, and I do try to go back into the community to, as an example, to show like, hey, there's a way, there is a path for you. It's going to require some hard work. It's going to require some determination, but it is out here. You can truly become what you want to become, and that's that takes mentors. It takes people going back. It just takes so much, but it can be achieved, and I think that's the message we often miss. I think that's what I think that some people believe that just programs for the sake of having programs will sometimes somehow move the needle. I don't believe that. I don't believe that that's the case. I think it takes action, it takes examples, and it takes us going back into the community. I think I'm an
Mm.
example of that. I certainly think I can't think of his name right now. He's running for lieutenant governor. Um, but I
TW
certainly
Shannon.
TW is another example. Like there are examples that we can use, and it just takes us to go back into the community and say, hey, here's how I've done it. Let me show you how to do it as well.
So that's awesome. So let's talk about bringing it back to the community, right?
Sure.
Let's bring it home to Ward 2. You've been on city council for about 6 months, right? So what
Yes.
are your biggest priorities for Lawton moving forward?
So for me, I believe in the Kids First initiative that we have here in Lawton. So everything that we do is it's about those kids. So when I drive through the neighborhoods in Ward 2, I am concerned about blight, which I think we are doing a pretty good job at attacking to the best of our ability. Just being constantly pursuing
Hmm.
the the removal of dilapidated structures for so many reasons. Sometimes you're going to find that it is slum landlords, which I am not a fan of at all, because they're not doing justice by the people that are paying them rent. I have a problem with that. So the city going through and enforcing the codes to keep housing up, I think that's important. I think it changes the landscape for our kids. Think about the kids that are running around in the neighborhoods, and what do they see and what are they exposed to, right? If you live in a neighborhood where everything's run down, all the windows are broken, boarded up, like that's not helpful. That's just not helpful. That doesn't help send the right
Hmm.
message. I like the idea of how we're remodeling the parks. I mean, let's create a nice environment for our kids to go in and play in. And as a matter of fact, I just spoke with some of the city staff and the city manager, and in this coming week, I've taken off from work, but I've done that so that I can focus a lot on not my kids, of course. My wife and I are planning a trip, but in addition to that, when I'm not on a trip or something, what I want to do is we're going to ride through my neighborhoods and we're going to talk about the local parks, the smaller ones. Just I want to make sure that we have a plan in place, and I know they do, but I want to be aware of it and understand what does the timeline look like, and so that the community knows that hey, we're kids first, and we're doing things for those kids, for because that's our future, right? Like that is the future of Lawton, and it starts now while they're young.
I love what you're saying because, as a psychologist and a teacher, I'm a teacher here in Lawton Public Schools. One of the things that I think about is, and I don't know if you're aware, if, if you all have heard of the broken window theory. And the broken window theory is what you're talking about, right? Because if we don't take care of our community, why does our community think they have to take care of the community? But if we give them something nice that primes our children, our future, right, to do exactly what we want them to do, which is put kids first, put schools first, put everything where our children are going to be able to use it. So I love your answer about that because it really resonates with me as a psychologist and how I see the world through that lens. So thank you for that answer.
I hear that. I mean, I feel like we get our kids used to a certain environment, a healthy environment, like that. They'll understand that that's the standard in life, right? And when they become adults, like that's the expectation is that their environments are safe, healthy, and nurturing. So that's just what I believe.
Well, Tara, there's a question that dropped. Maybe you can answer this, and I'll pivot to Lisa. And so
Mhm.
it's from Michelle Ashlock. She asks, are there issues like education, small business, religious freedom, or public safety that resonates particularly stronger or strongly with the Latino voters in our area that Republicans may not be talking about enough?
I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question. I wish
So
I had a yeah.
So
So,
as a
Lisa,
Latina, I think
yeah.
I can bring a little bit of insight into this. So the Latino community, we're rooted in a lot of traditional behaviors and expectations.
Hmm.
And so sometimes because we are our people follow what our parents did. Okay. And us not doing what our parents did, it's almost like we're disowning our heritage, we're disowning our culture. And we want to wash away, right, what was worked for so hard to accomplish. But what I think a lot of the Latino community that doesn't maybe understand is that every generation becomes better than the last generation. And that's the parents' desire, or should be, right? That every generation should surpass the next generation. Our generation is a more literate generation. We have more opportunities. There, of course, with with all the possible grants and all scholarships and everything that we have, my goodness, Google is free. The internet is free, right? If you pay for Wi-Fi, right? But information is at the fingertips. But I think one of the things that hurt my community is that we don't go and research for ourselves. Our research is talking to the neighbor, talking to my friend. But I'm only going to be as smart as my friend is, unless I decide to read. Um, there was an activist that said, you can never uneducate a person who has learned to read. And that's why reading is so important, and being able to be informed, and podcasts like these are so important. And if you're going to be a Democrat or a Republican, be able to back up your point, be able to know why, not just because my mama told me, right? Not just because auntie next door, has the loudest voice and she'll scream the loudest. No, what did I go and research? So, in speaking about my Latino people, I believe that that's one of the reasons why we think that we are disenfranchised, that we think that the Republicans don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But the question is, how many of us are Republicans? Go look at the number. How many Latinos vote Republican, right?
Absolutely.
So it might be a small portion of the community, and that's still following through. And again, I am not here to preach either party. I'm just here to tell you, as an educator, as a long serving person with a heart of to my community, is find out for yourself. If I give you a fish, you only eat today. But if I teach you how to fish, you will eat for a lifetime. And that's what I tell my students. I never speak politics with my students, but I tell them, I'm going to show you how to think. Every kid that comes into my classroom has a 350-pound brain. I tell them, by the time that you're done, I'm going to make you a lean, mean thinking machine. Along the way, it might hurt you, right? And along the way, you might say, Dr. Pleasant is so mean. I hate her. I said, talk to me in 5 years.
Right.
I
I think Lisa, you need to be the one to reach to be the outreach for the Latino community for the GOP. I think we certainly
I'm
need to do
willing to.
more in that area, and there's a lot of Latinos that they identify themselves as such, but they will always say that we're Americans first. And so, as long as we have a multiple areas of communicating with the base here in Comanche County and throughout CD4 and through the rest of the state, that's what people are looking for. And that's why we do the podcast. We do the
Yes.
podcast here. We do the Patriot Sentinel podcast, and other podcasts are starting to pop up. And then one thing that we all have in common is that we're trying to get the word out, and we're trying to disseminate on different platforms. We have the website with the Facebook page. Every county has their Facebook page and website, and there's no such thing as over or too much information. I think
No.
too many people sit out on local elections, especially because either they're not plugged in or they just don't care about local elections. And we've got to change that at the local level, and that's what I've been doing since 2021. To close us out tonight, Taron, there might be someone listening right now who has voted Democrat their entire life. They're frustrated with the economy, the culture, and maybe the direction of the country. But pulling that lever for a Republican still feels intimidating, right? To them.
Mm-hmm.
So what is your message to that person if you had to say, it's not, just do it?
I would say try to push back everything that you may feel is right because of how your family has looked at party voting, or the people you have been exposed to. Push that back. Go and research for yourself and think about who you are. What are your values? What are the things you believe in? And then look at, okay, what does the Republican Party say that they believe in? What is and see where it all lines up. But you have to be able to push back your biases, and that's hard because you've been exposed to parents, grandparents, aunts, friends, stuff that think a certain way, and you have to be able to kind of silo the noise, get it all to the back of your head, and really evaluate it for yourself. You know, what are these list of things that the party stands for? What are the things that I believe in, and where does that line up, right? And I think that can help you figure out where you need to be.
Absolutely.
Councilman Taron Epps, thank you so much for joining us today. And, thank you so much for the decades of service that you have given our country and you continue to serve in our community. We're so happy that you came to see us today.
I agree.
Thank you for
And
having me.
to our listeners, conversations like this are exactly how we grow a party. If you found tonight's episode powerful, share the video on your timeline so others can hear Taron's message.
And if you are ready to get off the sidelines, the Comanche County Republican Party meets every third Tuesday of the month. We would love to see you there.
And we're kicking things off at 11:30 a.m. with our GOP luncheon at the Lawton Country Club. But you must RSVP. You have to RSVP for this event. You'll hear directly this month from Jake Merrick, T.W. Shannon, Sidney Bird, and John Cox.
Beautiful.
Don't forget, Lisa. Don't forget, the same day at 6 p.m., we're right back at the Lawton Country Club for our evening meeting. Confirmed guests include Marty Quinn and Kevin West. Get involved and help us hold the line. Charlotte will be back with us next week. Until then, stay vigilant, stay involved, and stay good, Comanche County. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.